Good morning. Welcome to the Republican Professor welcomes Michael Schwartz of Gun Owners Radio and the founder of the incredibly successful San Diego County Gun Owners. We're so excited to have you here. Thank you for being with us, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, great to see you, brother.
Well, I met Michael about 5 years ago. I think exactly 5 years ago at the Marriott in Costa Mesa. I responded to, I believe, something I saw on Facebook. I don't know if you had put an ad on Facebook, but that's incredibly effective marketing if you did. And the ad just said how to be a Second Amendment activist.
Yeah.
And so I showed up and the room was full, as I recall. And Michael was there giving us the backstory on something I did not even know existed in California, which was effective local and county Second Amendment activism. It just blew my mind, you know. So I listened to Michael give this presentation and this training. And then Michael, I don't know if you remember, but we went to Starbucks after that.
Had a sandwich and a drink, and we talked for a long time. I do remember that.
That's right. Yeah. And you gave me a ride in your Jeep at the time. And Tommy Clark was with us too. I don't know what happened. I'm still friends with him, but I haven't talked to him in a while. But I wanted to give you a chance to promote what you're doing and what you're all about. Tell us your backstory. How did you get into Second Amendment activism?
Sure. And before that, that Second Amendment, just to touch on that Second Amendment, how to be a Second Amendment activist class that's something a curriculum I put together at the request of, at the time, it was Assemblyman Joel Anderson, and then he turned into State Senator Joel Anderson, and now he's San Diego County Supervisor Joel Anderson. Oh. And he got a bunch of people together. I was already doing some Second Amendment activism, and I'll tell you how I got into that in just a sec. But he said, you know, the Second Amendment activism or Second Amendment lobby used to be extremely important in California and very organized. And he said, we got to do something to get that back. And we were in a room full of people that he had invited, and they basically said, well, we don't really know what to do. You know, we write, you know, letters and we make phone calls, but what do we do? So I volunteered to put together a curriculum, and I just started making phone calls. I called every activist, every attorney that had anything to do with the Second Amendment, every organization that was Second Amendment. I just gathered as much information as I possibly could, and I put together what turned into be, you know, that Second Amendment activism, how to be a Second Amendment activist class, and it's evolved. But interestingly enough, most of the information doesn't come from Second Amendment sources. It comes from activism sources. So I was reading books about Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Jackie Robinson, and I'll tell you what's you're gonna laugh, but one of the most useful books was Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky.
Yeah,
it is a landmark book.
It you know, and if you, so it's all about communism. They wanted to spread communism, so, you know, replace the word communism with whatever you like. But you know, I'd say a good 80% of that book is really somewhat, you know, but 20% of it's too much. It really was a little too radical. But 80% of it is, you know, exactly what needs to happen. And I think that people in the gun world, because they tend to be on the right side of the spectrum, you know, I was going to say some of it causes them to recoil. No pun intended, but some of it causes them to kind of, you know, there's a lot of pause. They look at it and they think, you know, geez, this is too much. We shouldn't have to do this. We should just, you know, we should just logic ourselves into this. You know, we should just talk to elected officials, and they'll see how logical we are, and they'll vote our way, and we'll all go skipping off into the sunset. And it just doesn't work that way. It just never works that way. We don't want to our side of this, you know, the political spectrum, like I said, mostly because they tend to be, on the right side of the political spectrum.
Right.
They have this attitude of, hey, look, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to leave them alone.
Yeah.
And they'll live their life. I'll live my life. We'll all be happy. But unfortunately, the other side of the political spectrum has embraced this anti-gun stance, and they don't want you. They don't want you to just live your life. They want you to live their life.
Yes.
So they're going to continue to hammer on you. So all I did was put together some effective ways to fight back and be effective in getting our policies put forth, or their policies stopped before they're even policies.
Yes.
So that's the story of the seminar. But how I got into this was back in 2007. I was recently married, and my wife and I and another couple went out to the desert, and we were off-roading and shooting on public lands, and doing nothing weird or strange or out of the ordinary.
Did you have machine guns?
No, did not have any machine guns that trip, unfortunately.
Grenade launchers?
None of those, left those at home. We were just a couple of couples camping and just kind of having fun in a area that was well known for shooting, camping, that sort of thing. And my wife and her friend wanted to take my Jeep for a ride, so I took all my guns out of the Jeep, put them on a tarp on the ground, and they went off driving around in the Jeep. And a BLM law enforcement, Bureau of Land Management.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, BLM's taking on a whole different meeting. I tell people I was like 10 years ahead of this whole thing. I didn't like BLM, a decade ago.
So this is a federal law enforcement officer. You're on public land.
Exactly. And he
gotcha.
Rolled up and he said, I'm going to look around. We said, okay, no problem. We were professional and nice. And he looked at all my guns and he picked up a Mossberg shotgun, Mossberg 500.
Was it pump action?
Pump action.
Oh my gosh.
The most basic of firearms.
Yes.
The only thing was I purchased it with, it didn't have a full stock. It just had a pistol grip. Mm-hmm. And I forget the configuration that's called, like I forget what it's called, but anyway, it's totally common.
Tactical.
Yeah, but it's called like the Ghost Rider configuration or something weird like that.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's not unusual,
No.
Certainly not illegal. And he tried to tell me that in that configuration, that shotgun was in California an assault weapon. And I said, no, no, it's not. But I was very polite and very professional with him. Mm-hmm. Long story short is I proved to him that he didn't understand the law. He didn't know the law, and that the firearm was legal. He said, okay, I'm going to run the numbers. And if it's not stolen, I'll give it back to you. I continued to be very, very polite and nice and professional. I continued to talk to him, and I figured, hey, if this guy likes me, that's a lot, maybe it'll make it harder for him to put cuffs on me. Mm-hmm. But I was confident that I was right, and I was right. So long story short, I found out he was a gun guy, and he used to come to the same section of desert. He used to take his buddies there. They'd shoot. He wasn't even in favor of the assault weapons law. He didn't understand that he was trying to arrest me on. And all it took was a government check, a government paycheck for this guy to totally sell his principles down the river. He was going to put me in jail.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, that something's got to change. And, I remember thinking, if I were out here with a printing press, and I was creating a pamphlet that was critical of the government, and they came out and tried to confiscate it, people would be up in arms.
Yeah.
But when I went back to my job and my friends or whatever, that week, and told them what was going on, they kind of acted like I'd gotten away with something because it was guns. And I decided, this has to change.
Yeah.
And I got really, really involved. I got involved with the local NRA. I got involved with eventually the Republican Party. I got involved with campaigns on different levels, a sheriff's campaign, a congressional campaign, some other campaigns. And I was off and running.
Wow. That story, that's not the first time I've heard that story, but I never get sick of hearing that story because Michael, if I had to say you were, well, I'm almost not sure the best compliments to give you. On the one hand, you're this incredibly effective activist. On the other hand, what's so impressive to me about it is you are the most average, everyday person. I mean that as a compliment for you to be a gun activist. I would never know, right? I would never know you're one of these you're not one of these tactical guys that you see that's, has to have all the latest doodads and stays on track of everything. But for you to be put in that situation as a law-abiding, just normal, everyday person, just going about your business, lawful activity, were you scared at that time?
Yeah.
Did you get scared? Yeah.
Terrified. I was positive this guy was gonna. Yeah, I think there was a piece of me that kind of thought, well, gee, do I understand the law?
Yeah.
Here's a law enforcement officer telling me I'm doing something illegal.
Right.
And I was working. I worked at a bank. I was just some guy that worked at a bank, and
yeah,
I
you had a normal job, right? You had
totally normal.
You had a white collar normal job.
Yeah, I mean, recently married, just kind of.
You're not one of these guys in the garage, on his new rickety computer he just put together, with his guns, surrounded by gun safes and dynamite.
No, I'm like the worst gun guy ever. I barely have a collection.
Yeah.
I really, truly, I don't fall in love with guns. The only gun I fell in love with is KSG came out with this shotgun, this bullpup shotgun. And I think that's the neatest thing in the world. But I have a couple of Glocks. I have an AR that I built 20 years ago, and I keep, I say I built it, I assembled it 20 years ago. Actually, I bought it, and then I keep switching out parts. So I'm like the worst gun guy ever. I have a couple of shotguns. I still have that Mossberg shotgun that he tried to take away.
I mean, really, you would have gotten out of jail. You would have, it would have, but it would have been an incredibly painful process to go to jail. Then what happens to your
it could
gun?
have been,
It's
it could have been
impounded.
life altering.
It's impounded, right? It's impounded. Your car's probably impounded. You have all this property that now is in impound, and then you're in jail, which sucks. And then you have that on your record now as an arrest, and you have to get an attorney, and you have to pay money. Now, see, now it's not only taking your property and your liberty and your time, which is liberty, but it's taking your property, your money out of your bank account, because you now have to you now have to prove you're innocent. And I liked the example you gave of the First Amendment. Like, can you imagine if somebody came up, you're passing out pamphlets, and then it's the burden of proof is on you to prove that it is legal, lawful activity in your pamphlet, and you have to get into the details and the weeds of which preposition and adjectives you're using. I mean, that's not how it's done. Well, actually, increasingly now it is how it's done, seems like. But
well, I want to emphasize too, that week, I mean, it really wasn't about, and this is fine. A lot of people just, they want to own the guns that they want to own, and they're passionate about it. That's fine. If that's your motivation, fine. I encourage it, but this wasn't about that for me. I sat down after they left and was really quiet for a long time, and realized that I didn't live in the country I thought I lived in.
Yes.
And this was the federal government. So yeah, would they have discovered that the shotgun was legal? Probably. But the world we live in, pretty quickly. But the world we live in is,
look at a Turner's catalog.
Exactly. Well, that's what he said. He said, where did you get this? And I said, I bought it. And he said, not like that, you didn't. And I said, yeah, actually, that's exactly how I bought it. I bought it at Discount Gun Mart in San Diego. But the thing is, we live in a world too where, and we've seen examples of this over and over again, where law enforcement, if that charge didn't stick, he would have figured out something that did. He would have figured out some way
to save
yeah.
Trained.
And if, people that I can give you a very extreme example of that, if you look at, for those who live in San Diego or just anywhere in Southern California, back during the BLM riots, that whole, thing, the city of La Mesa,
The Bureau of Land Management was rioting.
No,
Sorry, I had to get that in there.
They in La Mesa, they had a huge demonstration that turned into a riot, that turned into a bank being burned down because one of their police officers questioned a guy who's black, and started it started it was not a good interaction between the two of them.
Mhm.
And the police officer found out that no, he wasn't doing anything illegal, but he was being a jerk to me, so I'm going to arrest him based on that, and got arrested. And by the way, they just found that the police officer didn't do anything wrong and he's trying to get his job back. We live in a time, where maybe my shotgun would have been okay, but if he decided, I looked at him the wrong way or whatever,
that's
he
good.
could have
That's a
found
good
something.
point.
He could have found something. This is federal. This is a federal law. So
we're just, for some reason, I think, coming to terms with both parties. I think are come to terms with how much discretion law enforcement has when they're doing their job. And a lot of people have recently started rethinking qualified immunity. A lot of people didn't even know what qualified immunity was or what the history of it is, why we have it. There's actually good reason why we have it, but in practice, it's just exactly like what you said, where a law enforcement, if it's just you and him, it's your word against his. And there's any number of things that are a crime. So, if you lie, for example, to a federal law enforcement, that's a crime. If you, and who's to say you didn't lie, and there's lots of things where the evidence is not really available to, or it's not the kind of evidence that you can reproduce and quickly convince 12 people or 20 people, whoever is in your circle, whoever needs to be convinced right away. So it leaves you kind of vulnerable, or if you strike
enormously vulnerable,
if you shove, if you, any number of things that you didn't really do, those are all crimes. And they empower a law enforcement official to impound your car, to arrest you, and just basically ruin your day. Now, you may not be at the end charged with a crime, and and probably not convicted, or maybe you would be. Depends on if they could freak you out into a plea deal. 97% of all convictions are pleas.
And I don't want this to, I'm not anti-law enforcement. I'm certainly not anti-cop, but this is a legislation problem. It's not a police problem. And we have layers and layers and layers of legislation that's controlling our lives in a country that was set up so that the government protects your rights, and so you could live self-governed. And I think we're so far away from that, and guns are such a good example of that. Such a black and white example of that. It's funny, a lot of people, I definitely have other views. I have views on, immigration and foreign policy and taxes.
Talk about that. Talk about your laser focus on the Second Amendment and how that's worked for you.
So I'm laser focused on Second Amendment issues because in just a couple of sentences, the way I explain it is you can't boil the ocean. So I can't have an effect on every single political stance that I have. But what I can do is I can pick this one thing, and I can be extremely effective on this one thing. And I have been. So, I'm moving the ball in one area, and hopefully other people can move the ball in other areas. But I
Yeah.
also think that if you're good on guns, if you're good on the concept of owning firearms, you know, of having access to lethal force, of carrying lethal force with you, of trusting people to, you know, to be able to defend themselves with lethal force. If you're good on that concept, you're probably good on other concepts or other subjects where the concept is similar.
Yeah.
Or you're close and you could maybe move the needle a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're a good, that's a great point about legislation. I think what came to mind was when you have such complicated laws that average everyday people don't even understand, and it seems like they're constantly changing, they're constantly adding things, or trying to add things, like the recent stuff in California. Yeah, I mean, it's like average everyday people can't look at even a federal agent can't look at it, a Mossberg pump action. I mean, this is not even semi-automatic. Pump action means you have to manually activate, you have to manually load the chamber with your, you know, with a hand. It takes time and energy to do that each time. And if an average everyday person can't just look at that and go, that's legal or that's illegal, you need some kind of special training to just even know that's kind of what I'm talking about is that the laws are so complicated. Shouldn't be that way. But hey, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about San Diego County gun owners. Tell us the story of San Diego County gun owners and what
So
you've been doing there. How long has it
sure.
existed, and what led to that?
So the story about the shotgun in the desert happened at the end. It was like December 2007.
Okay. Gotcha.
Like in January 2008, I went to my first NRA members council meeting. And in February, I was voted vice president. So I just jumped right in. Yeah, just this is happening. You know,
Let's get this done.
Yeah, get out of my way. You know, either fall in line, get out of my way, whatever, help. You know, but
you had the Mossberg with you.
So for a few years, I got really, really active in politics. And one of the things I did was got just, as a Second Amendment guy, got really involved in the Republican Party and realized that was an enormous mistake. They all kind of gave me lip service on how they were very pro Second Amendment. Yeah, guns. But when it came down to it, it was, the letter R first. That's what they cared about. So I'm going, hey, this guy's not really all that good on guns. Yeah, but he's a Republican. We're going to endorse him. Well, wait a minute, and I realized, look, the way I explain it to people is it's as if I went to McDonald's and ordered lasagna and then was mad because they didn't give it to me. McDonald's doesn't make lasagna. That's not their job. That's not what they do. And the Republican Party, that's not what they do. They don't enforce their platform. They don't really, and I'm talking about the Republican Party, the actual organization, the Republican Party.
Right.
They don't stand up for issues. And I was expecting them to stand up for, they have a platform, and this isn't, by the way, I think that the Democrats do a way better job of standing up for issues. They stand up for issues that people care about way, way better than the Republican Party does. But for the most part, the parties aren't designed to stand up for issues. They're designed to get people elected. So I got really mad, took my ball and went home and stopped playing with the Republican Party. And did a few more things, got involved in, a gun club. It was kind of the same story, to be honest with you. It was kind of the same story. I went to a gun club and said, hey, let's get political. And they said, we don't really, it's not our thing. We just kind of have a range or whatever.
So this is from 2007. I'm just tracking with you, 2007. And then so for a few years, do you look back on those couple years and think that's a waste? Or do you think that was incredibly valuable information that I got?
It was incredibly valuable information because I learned from mistake. I mean, we did I occasionally did some things right, and that was good. I learned from that, but all the mistakes I made, I definitely learned from them. And I realized the mechanics really of what needs to happen, you know. And that's what finally led to the first thing we did is, you know, I was beating my head against the wall and trying to get things done. And like I said, I was going to McDonald's and ordering lasagna, you know, all over the county. And finally, a guy who owns a gun range, he and I had lunch together. His name's Mark Halcon, and he just passed away a couple weeks ago. Good dude.
Which gun range?
He owned American Shooting Center in San Diego.
Oh,
good guy. Just a gruff, you know, kind of a, you know, rough talking kind of guy, but man, he was always super supportive. He and I sat down and had lunch, and he was like, look, what are we doing here? You know? And I said, well, we're losing is what we're doing, you know?
yes.
And this was somewhere around 2014, something like that. And so he said, all right, well, let's you know, I said, I have this idea, and I kind of spelled out what became San Diego County Gun Owners. I said, you know, we need a local organization that actually endorses people, that raises money, that's involved in politics, you know. And
so this is your aha moment at something, right?
I sort of, I'm not sure. There was like an aha 2 years, you know, it kind of, you know what I mean? It kind of developed, but
Sure.
what had happened is I had just spent 6 years in the political world, and I was looking around San Diego, and I'm going, hey, this group is electing people. This group is electing people. This other group is electing people. You know, and some of them are just special interest groups. Some of them, you know, Republican Party, some of them the Democratic Party, some of them are unions. But I realized not one of them cared about our Second Amendment rights. In fact, they were all pretty absorbed with, or I should say obsessed with tax policy. That's really what it all boiled down to, is tax policy. So I started thinking, well, we have to have an organization that is similar to them. You know, they have an employee, they raise money, they spend money on candidates, they endorse.
What a concept.
Yeah, but it's just about the Second Amendment, you know. So
yes.
I pitched, I said, and we actually, you know, identified the problem. Actually, on our website, if you go to San Diego County Gun Owners website, or Orange County Gun Owners, or Inland Empire, and you go to the About Us section, what is listed there is basically our mission statement. And that mission statement hasn't changed from that lunch I had with Mark Halcon. That's we came up with the problem, we identified the problem, came up with the solution, and then formulated a mission statement. It hasn't changed. Do
you remember where that was that you had lunch?
Yeah, it was at Filippi's in Little Italy.
Oh, no kidding.
I had the torpedo sandwich. It was delicious.
Is it still there?
It's still there. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm going to go there in honor of you and San Diego County Guns.
Filippi's was kind of our place. Me and Mark there were a couple Filippi's in San Diego. We used to have lunch there all the time, but this one was in Little Italy.
So you drew it out on a napkin or whatever, and you're like, now what was the next step, and how do you, I mean, you went from that to you became the employee, which means you had to get enough money for your salary. And I know that you don't get paid that much. It's all public record, especially for California.
Well, well, there's a couple of steps prior. So
yeah, okay. Tell us the story.
He said, look, do we want to start our own organization, or do we want to, you know, hook our wagon up to somebody else? And I said, I work for a bank, man. I don't want to start an organization because there's so much involved just running an organization. So he said, all right. And we had a meeting with Gun Owners of California. And for 1 year, we implemented the plan under Gun Owners of California, and they were super nice to us, and they really treated us well. We had a dinner, raised some money. You know, they were really great. They said, the idea sounds great. What do you need from us? And we said, well, we don't really need anything. We just need a banner to, you know, and some infrastructure. And they said, great, we'll help you out. So a year later, we took this other big step with Gun Owners California, and things are going well. And we were having monthly meetings, and we helped a gun store get their permit to become a gun range, which was huge. The 5-person city council.
Is this in
Carlsbad?
Carlsbad. Oh, really? Carlsbad.
All 5 were Republicans. All 5 were conservative, you know, red-blooded American, gun fear and whatever. And 4 of them voted against the idea that in an industrial area, in a 50,000 square foot warehouse that they owned out by the airport, they said, no, you can't have a gun range. We don't even want a gun range in our town.
Yeah, that's really what it was about. It's not like it's across the street from an elementary school and
Exactly.
one of the walls is missing and it just happens to be facing where recess is.
Nothing like
it
that.
has nothing to do yeah, exactly. Just okay. So it's in a safe area. It's where normally you would have that kind of stuff.
So we basically
nice.
implemented the plan. We put a bunch of political pressure on them. We went to the media. We went after people that endorsed and supported the politicians that were standing in our way. We got like 250 people to come to a planning commission meeting. Which
when you say went after, just clarify for everybody what that means.
Like,
okay, yeah, I guess that could mean a lot of things. We met with them and said, hey, this is a problem.
Met with them. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, this is a problem.
You peacefully met with them.
Yes, everything we did.
Mostly peaceful.
and that's actually the point I'm trying to make. We didn't protest. We didn't call people names. We didn't rally. We didn't march. We worked within the system to put what I call political pressure on the folks. And we eventually we won. We went from a 4-1 against to a 3-2-4. In favor of them getting their permit.
So you flipped 2 people. How long did that take?
Months. It took less than 6 months. Maybe the whole thing took about a year, but it basically from the time we jumped in to the time they got their permit was less than 6 months.
So that's actually lightning speed in politics time.
Yeah.
It is. And I get it. So I was on the radio, I was in the newspaper talking about it. And keep in mind, I'm still working at a stupid bank. So
that's right. Okay. So yeah, you are working full time, holding down a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Really,
and it was
8 to 5, really, because of hour for lunch. And then you're I don't know why people say 9 to 5, like you don't, like you just work 8 hours all the way anyway. But so yeah, so this is all on your own time.
This is lunch breaks and smoke breaks. I didn't smoke cigarettes, so I did activism instead. So I'm doing all this stuff. I was a trust officer at a bank. It was a good job. It was a fairly high paycheck. It was a lot of hours. It was more than 8 to 5. It was like 7 to 7 sometimes.
Wow, that's even more impressive.
So I would, it was kind of funny. We did this fundraising dinner and we got a couple hundred people and we raised like $25,000 or something like that. We did this big dinner. And the day after, we did it on a Saturday night. It took months to plan.
It was at McDonald's. He served lasagna.
Yeah, exactly. The Monday morning after the dinner, my boss and his boss had a meeting with me and they were like, look, we don't know what's going on, but a little distracted and you need to, and I'm like, okay, don't worry, everything's fine. I didn't tell him, but in my head, I'm thinking the dinner's over, so
now he knows.
Yeah.
He's keeping track of you.
Yeah. It was a sacrifice. It was truly, it ended up, and the reason I'm telling this story is because, I was putting in at least like 50 hours a week in my job. And there were many weeks I was putting in another 40 hours in activism. And I realized this, and we weren't getting done what we needed to get done still. So we decided, hey, you know what? We just had this fundraising dinner. We just had this major victory. There's a lot of good things. The wind is at our back. I think we need our own organization. So that's what we did. We started the organization. I quit my job, walked away from my job.
What year was that?
This was the end of 2015. And there was no safety net. We didn't have $1 in the bank. Our organization didn't have $1 in the bank. I kept my resume up to date. I told my wife, hey, don't worry, and took an enormous pay cut and just did it. And I got to tell you, I'm glad, like, had I kind of just put my big toe in and then my foot and then it wouldn't have, going full force like that was the only way to do it. And as an activist, so I'm doing all these things as a volunteer, Now I'm going to people I know and saying, hey, will you donate money? You know, one of the things you're donating money to is to help pay my salary. It was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It was,
I can see.
you know, it was uncomfortable, but you know, somebody sat me down, one of the bigger donors, who's still a bigger donor today, sat me down and he said, look, if we weren't going to have a full-time employee, I wouldn't be interested in this project, number one. And number two, he said, I pay professionals all day long. I pay lawyers, I pay CPAs, I pay doctors. I'm paying you to be an expert in something that's important to me. And a paid employee, well, it changed my mindset. And a paid employee is crucial. And that's another thing.
Absolutely.
On our side of the political spectrum, there's kind of this, you know, well, hey, we have to be benevolent, you know. And
yeah.
That's great, but the other side's paying professionals all day long, and they're mopping the floor with us.
Yep. And we don't make the correlation. It's weird. It's so weird. Well, another thing, I mean, everything you've said about the Republican Party is true. I mean, when you were almost arrested on federal land, let me see, that was 2007. Who was in the White House in 2007? Who was in the governor's mansion in 2007? We had a Republican president, Republican governor of California, and you were almost arrested for having a pump action shotgun.
An assault weapon that was signed into law by a Republican governor.
You know, that's right. Probably used them several times in movies.
Duke Menjian, I think it was George Duke Menjian. I don't know how to say his name. The Armenian guy.
Well, then Schwarzenegger expanded it. He was another part of or he actually, his big thing was the roster. That was his big thing. He signed the roster into law.
Yeah.
But
so this is totally necessary what you're doing, and the whole idea of now let's get to how can we support you and what are you working on now?
So San Diego County Gun Owners started out as just a simple concept. We're going to get a bunch of money and a bunch of people, and we're going to get the right Second Amendment person elected on the local level. So city council, mayor, county board, sheriff, that sort of thing. Not state or federal. There are already organizations that are working on that. We just want to focus on local, where the state and federal people are born. That's where their political careers are born.
Yes. Tell us about that, because a lot of people miss that. So a lot of people think local and county, I don't even know what that, who cares about that, but it's incredibly important. So share with us why.
So one of my favorite things to do is when an anti-gun regulation or bill comes out, you know, whether it's in Sacramento or Washington, DC, there's a proposed law, a bill that's going to ban your guns or ban your possession or whatever. It's going to do something horrible, you know, having to do with guns. I look to the authors, I look at who authored those bills, and I go back and 9 out of 10 times, it's somebody who started out in a city council somewhere or a school board somewhere. And it's a lot easier, would have been a lot easier to stop their career if in the city council, or at least educate them in the city council than it would have been, you know.
I really like that way of thinking, the education part, because I do think that people can be changed sometimes, but it's probably at the beginning. I don't know if it's at the end.
It's hard to change someone's mind, but we have absolutely changed people's minds as well. People in power, people in political power.
It's like any problem, right? Any problem, the sooner it can be identified and dealt with, the easier it will be. It might still be a little work at the city council level, but it's a lot less work than later.
So that was the concept, but along the way, you know, a bunch of things popped up, a bunch of programs popped up that have been successful. Gun Owners Radio was never a part of the plan, but it's boom, it popped up.
How do we link to Gun Owners Radio? Well, I'm going to put it in the show notes.
Sure. It's gunownersradio.com, gunownersradio.com. It's every Sunday from 4 to 6, or you can listen. Any podcast provider has our episodes.
It's on Spotify.
Spotify. Yep.
Okay.
So
I'll put a link to it in the description on YouTube and on our website.
Thank you. We have a women's program called Not Me. So one of the best things I did is recruited and hired and promoted my secret weapon, and her name is Wendy Hoffman.
She's coming on tomorrow.
She is.
We're going to interview her tomorrow.
She is absolutely. You can tell her that I said she is the secret to our success. Okay. She's amazingly smart and passionate and hardworking. She has an MBA from USC. And she could have a lot easier jobs, making a lot more money, but she's passionate about the Second Amendment and has made our organization special. One of the ways that she's truly made our organization special, she came up with this idea for a women's program called Not Me, #NotMe. And in San Diego, it's Not Me SD. In Inland Empire, it's Not Me IE. And in Orange County, it's Not Me OC. And we're actually spinning this off. It's going to be its own 501c3. It's going to be its own organization because it's such a good idea. And it's a pretty simple concept too. The idea is, in order to stop and prevent sexual assault and domestic violence, we're going to help any woman who contacts us legally obtain a gun, get the training she needs, and then get a CCW so that she can carry the gun outside of her home for protection. And the way we do that is we pair her up with a trained, experienced volunteer who's also a woman. And she walks her through. It's not just information on a website. She walks her through, takes her by the hand and walks her through the whole process.
Incredibly important.
Awesome. And in Sandy, and it's free.
Important.
It's free. There's no cost.
Wow.
So,
and that's quite a value too. That's
huge.
That's a lot of value.
And if it is now, if she can't afford to buy a gun, or if she can't afford training,
now the gun's not free, right?
Gun's not free, training's not free. But if she can't afford it, then we find her grants or discounts and make sure that self-defense is not financially prohibitive.
That's awesome.
So
that's key too.
So anyway, over 500 women have gone through this program in 2 years.
Wow.
500. Wow.
That's a testimony all in and of itself.
This is Wendy's. That's just in San Diego. There's some more in Orange and Inland Empire. Just in San Diego, 500 women in 2 years. Wow. She came up with this idea, planned it all out, designed it and everything. We launched it, I want to say 2 years ago in March. And I remember having a conversation with her. We had a press conference, and I said, well, if we get one station to show up and we get, I don't know, a dozen women to respond, I think that's a success.
Yeah.
And she agreed. She said, yeah, all right. And we had this press conference, and like 30 or 40 women who were members of San Diego County Gunners were in the press conference. And every single TV station in town showed up.
Wow.
Including Telemundo.
Oh, wow. Really?
And covered it. It was great. And I think we had it on a Thursday or maybe a Friday, but within 3 or 4 days, we had over 100 women respond.
Wow.
Wow.
What a concept, not having to use the police officers as a bodyguard. What a concept. Isn't that amazing? You don't have to use the government all the time as a bodyguard, because they're not there all the time.
And if you're a woman and you are passionate about self-defense, and you're passionate about empowering other women, and you're passionate about the Second Amendment, this is a way that we want to make activism easy. So this is a way for you to do truly effective activism.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, do we have a couple more? I want to talk about, just give me a couple minutes to talk about what activism is real quick.
You have as much time as you want.
Okay. A lot of people, activism is kind of a broad term, but really it's very, very specific. People think that, people call a lot of things activism that it just isn't activism. Posting a meme on Facebook isn't activism. If you read every single word of a lawsuit that's being filed that you're not a part of, that you're not funding, that you're not the attorney, that's not activism. Reading a bill that's being proposed in Congress, and understanding exactly what they're trying to do, that's not activism. Activism is doing something that affects public policy, and knowing what's being proposed, and talking about it and making a snarky comment about it. That's not doing it. It's not really affecting public policy. I would even argue that
You're blowing people's minds right now. You're just thinking, like, what? No,
I know, and I don't mean to be rude. You think of this is tough love.
Not
This
rude.
is hey guys,
We all need tough love.
you know, you got it. I mean, it's a contact sport. Politics is a contact sport. You got to roll up your sleeves and get in there. I mean, figuratively contact.
Sure.
You have to.
You have to always say that nowadays.
I know. So you have to do something that actually affects public policy. Who makes public policy? Well, elected officials.
Yes.
So what you have to do to truly be an activist, you have to help get an elected official elected, or you have to pressure that elected official into doing something that you want them to do. And I mean, I'm talking.
How does a meme? How does a meme not? Because I guarantee you, there's somebody out there that's thinking, but if I post this meme, that's what I'm doing. So what's the disconnect there? When you say elect somebody, what's missing from people that they need to go, okay, how do I do that? Because I'm sure there's a gap in their mind. Like,
sure.
Okay.
So activism is changing the course of events. So whether or not you post a meme, the elected official is going to vote the way the elected official is going to vote. So you can post that meme all day long, and there's zero chance that elected official is going to find that meme and is going to be convinced by that meme, is going to change their mind because of that meme. What you have to do is you have to first get the elected official you want into office and then influence them to do something that wouldn't have been done otherwise.
Sketch that out. Like, okay, so first of all, identifying the person. How do you do that?
Good question. One of the things I'm really proud of with San Diego County Gun Owners is I've watched Joe Lunchbox and Jane Lunchbox, just kind of the average everyday citizen. Maybe they voted every election, if they remembered to, but they really weren't involved in politics at all. I've watched them get to know their city council member, their mayor, their local sheriff, whatever. Like, get to know this person, show up at an event, introduce themselves, tell them, hey, this is what's important to me. And then if it's a candidate, they'll say, hey, they talk to them, get to know them, find out where they are on Second Amendment issues or whatever. If it's a candidate, if they're running for office, then they help them. They help them raise money. They help them get more votes. They help them, walk precincts, make phone calls, that sort of thing. Yeah. Maybe they throw a small fundraiser in their backyard for this candidate. And then after they're in office, they help, get policy changed. One of the ways, so in San Diego, it used to be impossible to get a CCW. We helped change that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't want to get in the way of your momentum that you had, but when you were talking about not BSD and the campaign, the women campaign that Wendy was doing, and you had listed a bunch of stuff like we help them get the CCW. And I was just thinking, if average everyday people across the country or whoever's watching this in California knew what was behind that one phrase, get a CCW, just that alone, the activism behind that alone. I mean, not to mention the mentoring and the training and making sure the gun ranges are open and the gun shops are open. We actually had that issue 2 years ago. They were shut down.
Yeah.
In Ventura County. You can read it on the Ninth Circuit's website.
Well, they tried to shut it down in San Diego. We were actually in touch with Firearms Policy Coalition after all that happened. They tried to shut it down in San Diego, but because I had a relationship with the sheriff, we talked to the sheriff, and the sheriff said, you know what, we're not shutting down the gun shops.
That right there is a huge tidbit that you just gave, because your organization existed and you already had these relationships, right? Was that a phone call? What was that?
Yeah,
did you go? Okay.
Yeah. So what happened was, and then I want to get back to the CCW thing. So remind me to get back to it.
Okay.
So what happened was we were all walking on eggshells. Are they going to shut down the gun shops because of COVID or
March 2020? Yep. Okay.
So a supervisor here in San Diego, his name's Nathan Fletcher, and he's a horrible person.
Yep.
He at a press conference, a journalist asked him, and he said, "Yeah, the gun shop should all be shut down, due to COVID. They should not be in operation."
I remember that.
He didn't ask anybody else. He didn't ask an expert. He didn't, he was way out of his swim lane. And
shame on you, Nathan.
Yeah, truly, he's a bad guy. He's not a good person.
I think I actually had a gun in 10-day at Gunfighter Tactical during that time. So I was watching that very carefully, because a lot of people don't understand this, but there's a mandatory 10-day waiting period, a cooling off period. So even if you have a gun already, this is how crazy it is. You have a gun already. In order to cool off, well, you're already armed, you're already legally armed, but in order to cool off, you need to have 10 days before you pick up the other gun. Well, anyway, so this was during that.
Yeah. So I called the other two supervisors, the other two county supervisors, both elected officials, and, pled my case, said, "Hey, here's what's going on." I called the sheriff's department and said, "Hey, my main contact there was the undersheriff, but I, spoke with the sheriff as well."
You talked directly to both of those individuals, the undersheriff and the sheriff?
100% directly to them. And
did you have to go through somebody? Did you have to go through their secretary or their administrative assistant?
I sent them a text.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, because
that's Second Amendment activism right there.
It's activism. You got to be able to have access to them.
That's right.
And
how many members does San Diego County gun owners have right now?
We just went over 3,000 members.
And they each pay
$10 a month or $100 per year to be a member.
Used to be able, your shtick used to be, it's about a box of ammo. Now you can't say that anymore. Yeah. But
now I say $10 a month is about half a cup of coffee.
So that.
The reason I have access, by the way, is one of the reasons is, okay, so we helped get a bunch of people elected. And then we formed relationships. And then when we were fighting for CCWs, I got a guy named Rob McNellis on the Santee City Council. He wrote an op-ed saying, "Hey, we really need to have CCWs." That op-ed went into the Union Tribune, the local paper. And he introduced a resolution saying, "Hey, we as a city, the city of Santee, send the sheriff, we send you $20 million a year to be our law enforcement. We want you to change your CCW policy."
Oh,
and
wow, that's creative.
Yeah, that sparked a conversation. The very next week, the sheriff called me directly and said, "Okay, let's sit down and talk." And we did.
Wow.
And we got the CCW policy changed. And now pretty much, if you can pass a background check and go to the class and pay the fee, you're getting a CCW in San Diego.
So the city of Santee didn't, sorry, Curtis, what would you going to say?
I just said that's the way it ought to be. Yeah.
The city of Santee did not have their own police department. They contracted with the county sheriff department. That's their police department. And so they had that relationship, as a financial relationship.
Correct.
That's the background. Okay.
That's why I picked them. That's why I picked Santee. We have 18 city councils in San Diego, and I picked Santee for that very reason.
This is all very compelling. And I think that somebody's probably wondering, okay, you said that I should get to know my city council. That seems kind of intimidating. You're obviously, everybody's intelligent enough to find out who they are, because everybody can use Google now. But what happens? What if somebody is a little bit intimidated about, how do I just say hi? What do I say? What if they say they don't want to talk to me? What if they're not interested?
Well, first step is, if you're in San Diego, if you're in Orange, if you're in Inland Empire, the way to be an effective activist is to join San Diego County Gun Owners. Come to our meetings, get involved. Come to Orange County's meetings, get involved. Inland Empire, same thing. If you're not in that area, there has to be some group that exists that is involved in politics. But even if there's not, I got to tell you, the elected officials are people too. So if you just find out, if you just call up and say,
that's huge. That's a huge thing you just said.
Yeah, they're not, most, especially on city councils, most of them have full-time jobs doing something else. They're your neighbors.
They're just people.
So I actually say, one of the things I say is, well, let me continue. So,
yes, sir. And go back to CCW. Don't forget.
Well, the Santee story was where I was going with the CCW thing.
Okay.
That's how we got CCWs. But go to their website and call up and say, "Hey, I'd really like to meet so-and-so city council member. Are they making an appearance, giving a speech somewhere? Can I have a cup of coffee with them? If not, and I got to tell you, it's pretty easy to meet with a city council member. And when you meet with them,
that's a huge thing. What you just said too. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. If you meet with them, you form a relationship, just like any other relationship. Don't go and preach to them, listen more than you talk.
It's good.
Really get to know them and find out where they, say, hey, I got to tell you, here's what's important to me. Maybe it's the Second Amendment, maybe it's a parking issue in your neighborhood, but let them know, like, this is important to me. I was wondering, where do you stand on that? And don't correct them or lecture them. Just get to know them, figure out where they are.
Yeah.
That training right there on temperament and just being emotionally intelligent in that meeting, everything about you, your demeanor, what you wear, you've talked about that. I've seen you lecture on even what you wear,
Yeah,
you're not wearing camo with your NRA hat and
some t-shirt that says "Let God sort them out" or whatever.
Guns don't kill people, I kill people. Like that one guy on Billy Madison.
But I tell people, one of the things I've learned, one of the things I tell people, activists, is treat elected officials the same way you treat an underperforming employee.
That's a great quote.
If you're treating them any better or any worse, you're probably making a mistake.
That is so huge.
And huge.
That's a t-shirt. We got to do that.
No, it's huge. That's huge.
Well, I'll tell you where it came from is I would see activists
repeat it. You got to repeat it. You got to repeat that.
Treat elected officials the same way you would treat an underperforming employee. If you're treating them better or worse, you're probably making a mistake.
Mm-hmm. They'll ignore you.
And I've seen two things. I've seen activists they treat them like they're rock star. They treat them like they're famous.
Van Halen. Yeah.
And then they have absolutely no respect for you and you cannot get anything done and they don't care about you at all.
Yeah.
Or they treat them like they're
horrible.
And then they have absolutely no respect for you and you get, treat them like an underperforming employee. Gee, I got to tell you, I'm kind of disappointed about your performance in this area. I don't know. I mean, they need to know.
Give them a chance to improve.
Give them a chance to improve, but they need to know I might be interested in firing you and replacing you.
Yes.
They need to know that. They can't be, one thing I pointed out to my wife years ago, if you're in a room, if a politician's in a room with 100 people and 99 of them are huge fans and one of them is not, guess who that politician is going to spend all their time on?
Yep.
So don't be one of the 99, but don't be a jerk either. Don't be an extremist blowhard jerk. There's probably a time and a place for that, but not when you're getting to know.
And certainly not publicly, right? I mean, help them save face. Yeah. At least work with them first. Yeah.
It can be effective to attack people publicly, but it's few and far between. Insult people privately. In public, tell people what you like about them.
Right. That's right.
A lot of the Second Amendment activism techniques that you're talking about have to do with temperament and proper demeanor and emotional intelligence. And sometimes people on our side on this issue just are not well trained in that. It's not been modeled for them growing up. And so I think that's a challenge that we need to make. Go back to CCWs. I think you were making a point about CCWs. Conceal carry weapon. That's what CCW means. Carry weapon.
So you're acting, or we were talking about activism and what activism truly is. And, CCWs, people wouldn't be able to get a CCW right now if not for the actions we took. So we actually changed the
that's
course.
A permit. Just for anybody that doesn't know, that's a permit that's required by California state law. That is issued by which official? It's not state, it's local and county, right?
It's a state permit, but it's issued by the local sheriff, the county sheriff or police chief.
And you have to apply for it.
You have to apply for it. You have to pass a background check. You have to go through a class.
Okay.
And he
wasn't. I just wanted to get that. I wanted to get that issued there.
He wasn't issuing them. And what we did is we decided, okay, this is where we want to get to. We want to get to a point where people can, if you pass a background check, fill out the application, pay the fee, pass the class, that you can get a CCW.
Mhm.
And so we focused on it. And one of the things we did is by having relationships with the Santee City Council, helping people get elected onto the Santee City Council. We were able to get the Santee City Council to take steps and help us get a change in public policy so that people could get CCWs. We went on the radio, went into print, went in on TV, and pled our case. We didn't insult the sheriff. We didn't call him names.
Who was
We
the
didn't make
sheriff at the time?
It's a guy named Sheriff Bill Gore.
Same guy from Peruta versus San Diego, the federal case.
Exactly right. I was about to say the NRA had sued him in federal court for a good 8 years.
Mhm. One initially at the Ninth Circuit, 3-judge panel.
Right. The sheriff eventually, the final outcome was Sheriff Gore won, and the court said, nope, you don't have a constitutionally protected right to a CCW. So they didn't compel him to issue. But about 6 months, it's about 6 months after he won that federal case, that we, through political pressure, convinced him to change his policy, and now you can get a CCW.
That's huge. That's huge, because that's a story of winning politically when you lost legally.
Yeah, so we are part of a lot of federal or a lot of court case. San Diego County Gun Owners is a plaintiff, and I think we're plaintiffs in 5 different court cases now. And Firearms Policy Coalition is a huge part of that. Firearms Policy Coalition is to thank for all these lawsuits that we're plaintiffs in, and we work with them really well. But really, the way this started was kind of the attitude was, hey, you know what? We're putting way too many. What I said is we're putting too many of our eggs in the judicial basket.
Mhm.
So lawsuits are expensive. They're a crapshoot. They take decades.
So slow.
It's just one tool in the toolbox. We really focus on true activism. So that's the other.
That's very empowering, because so many people feel a lack of agency, and a lack of agency can have mental health issues. Like, if you don't have agency, then you're going to be depressed. You're going to be lethargic. You're going to become bitter. You're not going to have good mental health outcome on that. You're not going to be living life flourishing and stuff. And when everything is in the hands of lawyers, and you're even suspicious of lawyers, right? You're suspicious of judges, it's just so mysterious to the average person, the magical mechanics of the slow, arduous legal system, which is incredibly powerful when you win. But that's why it's so devastating when you lose, and it can just feel like, what are we doing? There's no way forward here. So you're giving a way forward that average, everyday people can do, and it is within your power. You can do these steps. You can get involved effectively.
100%. It doesn't take all. I said earlier that I was spending 40 hours a week doing activism. We don't need that from you. We just we need a couple hours a month. We need a few hours here and there.
Mhm.
And the infrastructure that we provide is intended to make activism easy so that you can be effective.
That's good. That's good. Well, how do we follow you on social media? How do we get involved?
Sure. So there's three organizations. There's San Diego County Gun Owners. So go to SanDiegoCountyGunOwners.com. And become a member, or at least sign up for our email. If you're in Orange County, go to OrangeCountyGunOwners.com. Same thing, sign up to be a member or sign up for the email. Or if you're in Riverside or San Bernardino, go to InlandEmpireGunOwners.com. Be a member, sign up for the newsletter. Later this year, we're working on LA County Gun Owners. We're working on Bay Area Gun Owners, and like I said, we've spun off Not Me, and that's going to be its own organization. So we're very, very good. Thanks to Wendy.
And a $10 a month donation, $10 a month is, people might think that's, if you think about it, you can afford it. Most people can probably afford it who are watching this. Just, don't go to Starbucks a couple times. And now, does that make a difference though? Because I mean, maybe somebody thinks I'm not going to do. It's not going to really do anything. Does it do anything?
Enormous difference. Just yesterday, a guy he said, "Hey, I'm not going to renew my membership. I moved to I forget which state." He said, "I moved to whatever state." He said, "Good luck. I really liked what you guys are doing, but I'm out of here." And I told him, best of luck and safe travels. But if you don't want these laws to come to your new state, why don't you continue to support San Diego County gun owners? We'll sit back here and fight, And he said, "Okay, do you want a donation or do you want me to continue to be a member?" And I said, "Definitely continue to be a member, because that way we can go to elected officials or candidates or whatever and say, hey, we have X thousand, we have over 3,000 members, and hopefully next year we'll have over 4,000 members, because that stuff's important to them, and $10 a month. A lot of these, we're a PAC, we're a political action committee. A lot of these PACs are funded by, guys that can write checks for $25,000 or $50,000. So, in order for us to compete with that, we need a bunch of people to give us $10 so we can have the same budget to compete.
And even that, like I know with Orange County gun owners, that keeps the website up, that allows us to hire the accountant that keeps track of all these crazy donation laws.
Well, and it helps us promote our endorsement list too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that's the big part of it, is we want to get our endorsement list out to as many people as we possibly can, so we can help get the right people elected. We don't have to win every single race. We just have to get strategically placed people in places of power, and then they can help others get elected. And eventually, we don't need every single person in California to agree with us. We just need, in most cases, we need 50% plus one, and that's 50% of the people that even bother to show up, so it's really, it's very, very possible to turn this thing around.
That's good news. Any parting advice?
Just get active. If you're listening to this and you're kind of wondering, I would say get out of your comfort zone. In order for me to do everything that I've done, I truly had to get out of my comfort zone. I had to leave a job that was extremely comfortable, that had a great paycheck. I had to go in front of a camera, and I had never done anything like that before. I had to give.
Were you nervous? Were you scared?
Enormously nervous. I still get nervous. But the point is, I do it. So get out of your comfort zone, realize that this is how important this is, how crucial this is. And that, frankly, we're all proud to live in a free country, but the price of that freedom is your vigilance. Yes. You have to be involved. And if you're not involved, why complain? Because you have the tools to make things happen the way they should. But if you're not doing it, someone else will. Someone else, and they're not going to do it the way you want it done. They're going to do it. They're going to work against you. So jump in, get out of your comfort zone, take that step. Whether it's just giving a couple of bucks to an organization, or actually showing up at a meeting and saying, "Hey, I'm here. What can I do to help?"
Curtis, did you have anything? I feel like I've been mainly the guy. Did you have anything?
No, I've been that last part you were saying, Michael, I just thought, and don't write off, for people that are listening, don't write off the reality that it feels good to vocalize things you believe, especially when those things are virtuous, they take courage. It's something that people can feel good about, be getting involved in.
Okay.
Not having to hide.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also a huge thing that you ended with, which was the story of the guy moving. Yeah. I mean, there's people that are going to be being exposed to this that don't live in California, but they are incredibly hopeful for California. They pray for California. So what you're saying, Michael, is that someone who, you don't have to live in California to give to Orange County gun owners a gift of any size. And you know, it's easy to become a member, $10 a month off of your credit card. You're saying that there's no laws that are preventing donations like that from pouring into California from people who love the United States and want to
Yeah,
see us succeed?
as long as you're an American, you can donate to a political action committee. You can donate to our organization. So absolutely.
So if you're in a let's say you're in a Second Amendment respecting state of some kind,
Like
and
Texas?
you've got extra money that you don't know what to do with, and you just keep buying various doodads on Amazon, if you just steer some of that money to California, it can actually change an entire state eventually. And then that makes your rights more secure, just the way it's designed in the United States. So Michael, I've never met anybody like you, just your temperament, your demeanor, the fact that you push yourself to do uncomfortable things. And, you know, you don't necessarily get a lot of joy or, you know, endorphins out of what you're doing. You're doing it because you really do believe it. And all the stuff that you've learned, that you've shared with us, we are so incredibly grateful. And I know I personally am grateful that I met you 5 years ago and have been in contact with you ever since.
Well, thank you very much. It's honestly, it's truly it's truly an honor to be able to do what I do for a living.
Well, we would love to have you back at some point to just stay tuned with what you're up to. And we really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Have fun with Wendy tomorrow. She's amazing. So
we will.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to that.
Good.
Thank you, Michael.